Hello explorers, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, we appreciate your time. In this episode, I want to dive into the importance of remittance across the continent of Africa. Why am I looking at this? Well, it is important that at this stage, Africa going through a huge transformation from economic, geopolitical, cultural, scientific areas and collaboration in a number of areas, managing the different geopolitical partners around the world. Financial aspect has been a question that a lot of African nations have been talking about, why the Bretton Woods institutions and the global and multilateral financial organizations do not represent Africa to an extent, because a number of these institutions were formed after, even before, a number of countries across the continent were actual countries themselves in terms of independence. Well, it is critical at this moment. Why I'm talking about this is because the news coming out from East Africa, it shows that these nations are beginning to realize the importance of remittance in their economy. Across East Africa, these countries are making tremendous increase in terms of the remittance coming from abroad. I'm talking about huge numbers here. In Kenya, for example, and across East Africa, remittance has outpaced foreign direct investment. I have to say that again. Remittance has outpaced foreign direct investment.
Now, as CGTN's Nick Mudima reports, over the past decade, remittances have outpaced foreign direct investments in the region.
The contribution is huge. This is something that cannot be ignored. With African nations struggling to stabilize their financial system and also struggling to also meet balance sheets and paying debts in a number of areas, remittance can be one of those areas that Africa can leverage that very important aspect of diaspora. There have been too much talk on that the diaspora does not invest in the continent of Africa. They don't do enough. They don't finance other projects. They are not sending money back home. They are not taking initiative. But the figures from World Bank does not lie. This increase, for example, the country of Kenya. Kenya is the largest economy in East Africa. It's one of the dynamic economic in the region. And looking at Tanzania, other countries across the region are beginning to muscle themselves to realize that the importance of extra money coming into the country, it's relevant and important. And with countries that can leverage that particular opportunity, talking about remittance here, it is an important discussion for African governments and financial experts should be having, because if the news that remittance can be more than foreign direct investment, looking at the situation in Kenya of over $4 billion a year in 2024, I think that's staggering. It's something that needs to be applauded, and Africans can leverage on that aspect to grow.
Now, Kenya has solidified its position as the leading recipient of diaspora remittances in East Africa. That is according to a World Bank report, which basically highlights the increasing significance of remittances as a financial lifeline for low and middle income countries. Now, as CGTN's Nick Mudima reports, over the past decade, remittances have outpaced foreign direct investments in the region.
Money sent home by Kenyans living abroad continued on a growth trajectory to hit a record $4.8 billion in 2024, according to World Bank data. This figure far surpasses its regional counterparts, with Somalia receiving $1.73 billion and Uganda $1.49 billion. Other East African countries, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, recorded declines in remittance inflows. Now, the DRC received $1.35 billion, while South Sudan's remittances dropped to $1.14 billion. Now, meanwhile, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi lag behind, each receiving less than $1 billion in remittance.
But the question here is, what is this money meant for? Where is it going? Is it money that's been meant for just for people to eat, or is money that's been set aside for projects? Is it money that has been set aside for developmental issues or NGO organizations? So we need to dive into it to understand a little bit more on where the money is going to and where is that money coming from. All of these are important things that the continent of Africa should take into consideration. However, with this amount of money that Africa goes ahead and borrow from other multilateral partners around the world. If African governments can look at the importance of remittance into their economy, the African governments can become more transparent in terms of understanding these figures. These are extra amount of money entering into the country, and African cannot question or cannot complain that this is not an extra boost into the economy. With 4 billion US, I will be happy to receive 4 billion US dollars in my country. Absolutely. No government will question or no government will get angry with that amount. So I think it's a tremendous increase, a geopolitical shift that can also make African governments or countries to take a second look with regards to remittance as a source of extra investment coming into the country. They can look at remittance as an important source of income that could shape the balance or the difference between what they are borrowing and how it transforms the lives of their people. Remittance has always been an important aspect and conversation in the global scene.
The World Bank report highlights the increasing significance of remittances as a financial lifeline for low and middle income countries. Over the past decade, remittances have outpaced foreign direct investments in these regions. In East Africa, countries like South Sudan and Somalia heavily depend on remittance inflows, which account for 17.5% and 13.6% of the GDPs, respectively. Now, Kenya's remittances, contributing 4.6% of its GDP in 2024, demonstrate steady growth from $51 million in 2001. Similarly, Rwanda's remittance to GDP ratio rose to 3.9% following an increase in inflows to $537 million in 2024.
Pay attention here. Countries like Cuba and other emerging economies around the world have used remittance over the years. There are lots of people from emerging economies that live in richer countries around the world, and the amount of money being sent to their country. I think these numbers should always come out so people can know the extra money coming in. It could be, according to experts, beneficial. It could also cause a lot of confusion in terms of the inflation rate in the country or if the money is not managed properly. So I'm not a financial expert, but I'm talking about this from the strategic point of view that if you have this huge amount of money coming in with these billions of US dollars coming in extra, money that was never planned. Nobody planned for this money to come in. But again, the Kenyans and other East African experts or nationals living abroad have decided to make this an important part of them supporting their families back home. So 4 billion US dollars is not chicken change. It's some kind of, it's a huge currency that came into the country. So I think Kenyans have benefited enough. We're looking at the figures here, according to the journalist talking about it. So Africans should take advantage of this and move ahead to develop systems and look how they can collaborate more strongly with the diasporans and what they are doing and take advantage of this particular extra income that's coming into the country. It is important. It will make significant contribution. It will support the continent of Africa. It will give a boost or that cap looking at the borrowing that a number of African nations are involved in terms of their debt crisis. It could be a source of an opportunity for growth in the continent of Africa, because this is not money that was planned that was going to come into the year. So if you have 4 billion US dollars dropping into your economy on a yearly basis, I think that is a tremendous boost in terms of your economy. Every African nation should actually be in touch with the World Bank. So such figures should be released so people begin to know the importance. Cuba have done this over and over. A number of other countries in Asia have benefited from remittance. I think that with figures like this that are trickling into East Africa, it shows that these countries across this particular part of the continent of Africa do understand the relevance and the importance of what remittance is all about. And the question that diaspora does not contribute, does not make any significant contribution in the continent, does not send money, does not invest, that question has been laid to rest. Let me know what you think with regard to the importance of remittance in your country, if you're an African diasporan or you're an African official or governmental expert who looks at this particular figure. And why do you think remittance will continue to flow in and makes the huge difference in those particular countries and across the continent of Africa? Why is remittance an important source source of income that a number of countries have leveraged over the years. And why does Africa does not leverage that particular opportunity to grow its economy and reduce its dependency on the multilateral donors that are coming from all over the world with huge interest rate, according to experts who've pointed out over and over. So this is an important area. That's what I'm talking about. It boils down to how Africa can use this from the geopolitical sense. They could use this to kind of build into it, take an opportunity with regards to the remittance. $4 billion US a year. It's not chicken change, like I've said. Again, I want to thank you for watching. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Smash the like button. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Now, Kenya has solidified its position as the leading recipient of diaspora remittances in East Africa. That is according to a World Bank report, which basically highlights the increasing significance of remittances as a financial lifeline for low and middle income countries. Now, as CGTN's Nick Mudima reports, over the past decade, remittances have outpaced foreign direct investments in the region.
Money sent home by Kenyans living abroad continued on a growth trajectory to hit a record $4.8 billion in 2024, according to World Bank data. This figure far surpasses its regional counterparts, with Somalia receiving $1.73 billion and Uganda $1.49 billion. Other East African countries, such as the Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan, recorded declines in remittance inflows. Now, the DRC received $1.35 billion, while South Sudan's remittances dropped to $1.14 billion. Now, meanwhile, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi lag behind, each receiving less than $1 billion in remittance. The World Bank report highlights the increasing significance of remittances as a financial lifeline for low and middle income countries. Over the past decade, remittances have outpaced foreign direct investments in these regions. In East Africa, countries like South Sudan and Somalia heavily depend on remittance inflows, which account for 17.5% and 13.6% of the GDPs, respectively. Now, Kenya's remittances, contributing 4.6% of its GDP in 2024, demonstrate steady growth from $51 million in 2001. Similarly, Rwanda's remittance to GDP ratio rose to 3.9% following an increase in inflows to $537 million in 2024.